All right. So, welcome everybody. We are super excited for this. And thank you, Emmanuel, for being here with me today. So, I am Bridget, and I am, again, really excited to be here with you because this is something that I personally struggled with many years ago. And I know that talking with other clients that I have, this is something that they also struggle with as well. So, just a bit of background about me is that I'm a wife and mother of 5 little kids. I am a certified health coach who helps moms heal after tough birth experiences. And today we are going to be talking about how to communicate with confidence, where we can helping you find your voice and keeping your peace during the holiday season. So the holidays are such a unique time. And again, they can be really beautiful and meaningful, but they can also feel super overwhelming, which is why I'm really excited for Emanuela to be here today to help us. So Emanuela, do you want to introduce yourself a little bit?
I'd love to. Thank you, Bridget, for having me and co-hosting this with you. I'm very excited to jump in as well. I don't know about you, but have you ever left a setting and been like, oh, I wish I said this, or why did I say that? Or maybe I'm the only one who falls prey to like that trap of ruminating over things that happened in the past. And I feel like the holidays can make that especially challenging. I don't know about you. So as a speaking coach, I work with mostly Christ-led entrepreneurs and leaders to help them overcome speaking blocks so that they can further their mission and business. I have 3 little boys of my own, and after each of those C-section births, I definitely had some level of like postpartum anxiety, stress, baby blues, breastfeeding challenges. And 5 years ago in 2019, I decided to turn that into a one-woman play. So it called My Breast Self, which I performed at some local theater festivals here in Ontario. And that experience showed me 3 things. First, it helped me to heal, and I learned that sharing our stories can really help us to heal. I learned that telling our stories in our unique way can connect us to our passions or reconnect us to our passions, which sometimes get lost when we become mothers. And then I also learned that telling our stories can help other people to connect us to people that maybe God has placed in our path to help them and serve them. Then following year, I actually shared that same story in a book called Mama's Gotta Grow on Amazon. And so the topics of birth, motherhood, storytelling, creative expression, all of those things are obviously very near and dear to my heart. And that's why when I heard that Bridget was running this workshop and she asked me to join her, I had to jump in, because while I help people with their voices in more of a professional setting, typically I find oftentimes it's in our one-on-one encounters with other people, in group settings, in just real life, that our voices tend to be even harder and scarier to use. So thank you, Bridget, for having me. I also want to say I have worked with Bridget personally to work through a lot of those birth-related pain points and wounds, I would say. And that work really helped me to show up both in my personal life, in events that we're going to be talking about today, situations, and also as a leader in my professional life. So I pray for you today, whether you are watching the replay, that you come here with an open heart and an open mind, because we might be doing some things that maybe step you out of your comfort zone a little bit, and just to an invitation to play and see what happens. This is a safe space, and we're just here to kind of learn and explore and share our stories.
Yes, for sure. Thank you so much. And again, I just love every time that I hear you talk. All right, welcome, Army. Before we begin, why don't we take a minute to say a little prayer and just welcome God into this space that we have here. All right, so we'll say in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for bringing us here today. We ask that you bless our technology so that everything just runs as it should. We ask that you would help us to embrace clarity and calm as we approach this holiday season and the Christmas season coming up. We ask that you would give us wisdom to communicate love and courage, and just help us to find peace in your presence, whether that be just if we're struggling at home or if we are struggling going to different parties or with birth or with just gatherings in general. We just ask that you bless this time and all the women here today and all the women who will be watching the replay. And we give you thanks and praise for everything that you give to us. Please speak your words through our mouths today, and just again, let every word that we say be exactly what these women need to hear. We ask this through your son's name. Amen. Father, Son, Amen. All right. So anybody who is here live, we would definitely encourage you to jump on your videos if you're comfortable with that. But if not, that's totally fine too. So before we get started, I just want to share a little personal story about myself and why I wanted to put this on, because for years I used to dread holiday gatherings, and not because my family's like so mean or anything like that, but because it was more of what I had internalized. And I was always thinking, well, who was going to make fun of like my alternative lifestyle now, because I live somewhat in a different way than most people do. And like, please tell me how strangely we're raising our kids. Please, no, like, I don't want you to actually hold this new baby that I have. And I just walk into the room with this like knot in my stomach being like, okay, what somebody's going to say now? And whenever I respond, am I going to be like, Bridget, why did I say that after the fact? So I would get home afterwards and just feel like super drained, not just emotionally, but like physically too. Like I would feel really heavy, and it just kept replaying these awkward situations. So maybe that's something that comes up for you as well. Like if there's a moment whenever somebody offers you unsolicited advice, which happens all the time, especially if you have kids, or if you have this old wound that gets stirred up by some careless comment or somebody who doesn't know the whole story saying something, or maybe even it's just like what's being said and how that makes you feel, whether that feels like triggering or just something feels off. So at the time, I didn't really notice what I was experiencing, but coming from the health side of things, this neuroscience tells us that our brains store emotional pain in the same way that they store physical pain. So in the same regions in our brain actually light up whenever we start to feel rejected as we do if we touch something hot, which is really interesting. So those feelings of exhaustion and like heaviness that I was feeling, that's literally my body trying to like work what to do with this stress. I can tell you though that after a lot of work and working with people who, like Emanuela, who are helpful and like giving you tips, it really does get better. So I would love for Emanuela to tell us about the power of communication and its importance before we move into some of the workshopping.
Yeah, thank you, Bridget. That's a really good kind of jumping off point for sure. So the power of communication. Well, obviously, we know that being good communicators is important because we will understand each other better. So some things I've learned when it comes to being an effective communicator is, number one, to be a better listener. And I know, of course, we're going to get into like tools we can use to protect ourselves, and it really is self-focused. But I have found that when I kind of take the focus off of myself and think of how can I serve this person, and can I serve them by really listening? Because oftentimes people aren't doing this kind of work. They're not doing a lot of self-reflection, and oftentimes they might be very well-meaning when they say things. So rather than us, taking everything and internalizing it and making a big drama in our mind, can we just allow it to just land, right? Without creating extra drama that needs to come at us. So sometimes, I'm not saying people aren't saying things that are hurtful and maybe dismissive, but a lot of times it's our own perception that we're bringing into the room that can take what they say and internalize it. So can we be more objective can we kind of like say, okay, if it wasn't me, if I was just a fly on the wall, how would I see this scenario? And the more we listen, the more we can really hear what people are saying. But then, of course, there are going to be times where we need to respond and actually use our voices, because the last thing we want to do is feel unsafe to use our voice and then feel regretful later that we didn't stand up and say something. So I want to talk a bit about speaking blocks. When I work with my clients, we kind of start with that mindset stuff and how did our voice come to be, right? What did our voice sound like or feel like when we took those first cries when we entered into earthside, right? Post womb, when we started to cry and make sounds and make voices. Because usually what ends up happening once we start using our voices is we are affected by how other people use their voice. So the first voices we hear are our parents, usually, or our caregivers, our siblings. And then as we grow up, we not only imitate their voices, but also we hear the messages we were told. So depending on your culture, your class, your gender, your status, maybe there's different ways that we speak, different slangs that we use. And those things, right, those messages also maybe things people told us like kids should be seen and not heard, right? Or maybe you had a mother who didn't speak up for herself. So you start to take all those things in, and then your voice kind of changes and adapts and becomes kind of a conglomeration of all of these other things that have happened to you. And our actual true voice gets buried. So what I try to do is help people kind of like find that voice again. But for today's purposes, right, I just want us to go through a little visualization of how it felt different times using our voices, when it felt safe and exciting and expansive, and maybe when it felt restrictive and hurt and dismissive. So I invite you now to close your eyes if that feels comfortable for you. If not, you can even just look down. Find a place that's comfortable in your seat, sit back, feet on the floor. And let's just tune into our breath for a moment. So take a deep breath in through the nose. Hold the breath there. Feel that breath moving into the lungs, filling up your whole body, and then slowly let it go through the mouth like you're blowing through a straw. And relax. Notice your thoughts and just allow them to kind of pass by like clouds. Try not to let your mind get too distracted. If you need to take another 1 or 2 deep breaths, go ahead and do that now. And now in your mind's eye, I just want you to allow a memory to come to mind of a time when you used your voice and maybe it made you feel rejected or hurt or dismissed. Just notice that memory there. And don't work too hard at this. Like whatever comes up, what first thing that comes to mind is usually where you need to go, and just focus there. All I want you to do is visualize this. See if you can enter that scene again in your mind, in your body. And then notice where in your body you're feeling this, whatever it is, the feeling of rejection or hurt or pain, anxiety. And maybe just name the feeling. And notice where it feels in your body. Do you have any physical sensations like heart racing, knots in your tummy? I want you to just be there for a moment. And again, name those physical symptoms that you're feeling. And try not to bring any judgment to what you're feeling. All right, now we're going to let that go. We want you to see that memory kind of fade away again like a cloud, kind of let it float off. And then you're going to, again, take a deep breath and just with that exhale, you'll let that memory go. Try and release any of those sensations. and just come back to a neutral place. Okay, we're gonna move into a better place now. So now I want you to think of a time where you, well, actually, let's do two more. One more is I want you to think of a time when you didn't use your voice at all. Maybe a time where you wished you had said something different, and notice how that feels too in your body. You can think of a time where you wish you had spoken and you didn't. And then again, what sensations you feel here in your body. And let's let that go now. See that memory floating away. Just in the interest of time, you can always come back and do these again with a little more. Or if you're watching the replay, you can pause this and take more time if you need to really feel that. And then we'll breathe in. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Come back to this moment. You're safe here. Okay, the last one now. A time you did use your voice and you felt heard, you felt validated, understood. Maybe it was a time that kind of scared you a little bit to use your voice, to communicate for yourself or for someone else. How did that feel? What sensations did you feel in your body? How did you feel afterwards? And what was the real outcome? Can you look back and see how that time of using your voice maybe played out down the road with that particular person or scenario or relationship? And feel those sensations. Let's take a deep breath in. And you can keep those sensations if you like them. Again, noticing where you feel these things in your body. And before we come back and open our eyes, I just want you to remember that those feelings in that last exercise, right, we can invite those in when we're feeling the way we did maybe in the first two exercises. And you have evidence there that you have expressed yourself before. And you're still standing. You're still here. It didn't kill you. Thanks be to God. And I bet it helped you grow, even if it wasn't something monumental at the time, but it stretched you. So it is safe to use your voice. And you can come back. And I'm going to pass the torch now to Bridget. She can continue on with us here.
Oh boy. That was a lot to go through, but so good. And I love the last part too that you said that it didn't kill you and you're still here and it can make you stronger. All right, I love that so much. So just to give you a little bit of an overview of kind of where we're going now that we have done this little exercise at the beginning is we're going to be talking about understanding your needs and your triggers that you have, how to set boundaries without guilt and like how to hold them actually, and then just some practical tools for maintaining confidence and staying calm through everything that happens. So right now I want to dive deeper into holiday stressors. So this is different than maybe some other stressors that you might have during the rest of the year. They might be similar, but typically around the holidays, there's usually certain thoughts or feelings, smells, anything like that that comes up, and it might bring you back to this place of like, I feel really unsafe and I don't like it here. So self-awareness is going to be the first is the foundation for being able to actually finally communicate with confidence and maintain your peace. So the first step in order to, again, maintain peace is to just first identify what your holiday stressors are. Now, again, some of these might be similar to what you've had in the past in terms of just day-to-day stressors. Some of them are going to be isolated directly to the holidays themselves. But if you have a pen and paper, if you have your phone nearby and you want to just jot some of these down, that might be a good starting point as well. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions, and then you don't have to obviously answer. If you want to, you're welcome to, but I'm just going to ask you some questions and just kind of see what comes up, if anything. Nothing might come up for you, and that's fine. These are just some starting off points. So the first question that I want to ask is, what situations or people make me feel uneasy or anxious during the holidays? And I always want to invite you to, if there's one thing that pops into your brain right away, then like that's what God wants you to work on. Don't try to sit there and be like, but like he was actually fine. Maybe I was just misreading that situation, or like, but it wasn't that bad. Like, no, whatever first pops into your brain, if anything, that's what you need to start to think about. Examples of those things could be like maybe a relative who criticizes everything that you do. Maybe there's a recurring disagreement about holiday traditions or schedules. Maybe certain things around the election that just happened are going to be really difficult for you. Maybe there's like a chaotic environment that just is like too noisy, too much activity, and it just does like makes you feel totally overwhelmed. So again, that's the first question, is what makes you feel uneasy or anxious when you think about the holidays? The next question is, what specific moments during these holidays have left you feeling drained, overstimulated, or just like kind of off? Like what doesn't feel good? And maybe that was you trying to keep everybody really happy by neglecting what you actually needed. So instead of you sitting down and eating your dinner, maybe you were getting up and doing all the things so that everybody else just sat still. Maybe it was feeling pressured to overspend on gifts or like host the perfect party instead of just making cinnamon rolls for people for gifts, or saying, we're going to do paper plates this year because I can't do the fancy spread. Or last question for you is, what fears do you carry into this holiday season? So do you have a fear of confrontation? Do you have a fear of being judged for your choices, whether that be like parenting, career, or any just sort of lifestyle choices? And the exercise that Emanuela just took us through was really great at bringing some of those up. So what you need to know is that those are your triggers. So whatever just came up for you, those would be your triggers. It's not to say that trigger is going to be like you're going to snap whenever this happens or whenever you see this or that, but just know that like these are things that are stressors on your body, and that now by recognizing them, it's powerful because it gives you a roadmap for what needs your attention. It's not going to be that you're going to be able to eliminate every single one, but it will now give you a place where you can start to strategize to be like, this is how I'm going to deal with this or this or this or this. So that self-awareness is really like the map. Then from there, or actually before I get to there, so self-awareness is going to help you reduce reactivity. So whenever you understand your triggers, again, it's not going to mean it so that it just like disappears. But again, you can put yourself in a place where maybe you have a little bit more control over how you might respond to them. Understanding your triggers helps you set clear boundaries. And it also is going to build emotional resilience, which you're like, why do I care about emotional resilience? That doesn't do anything for me in the moment. But each time that you overcome these little triggers, that's going to build and build and build until eventually your brain is going to be like, I got this. Like, it's not a problem anymore. Like, I don't care about Aunt Karen. Like, I care about her, but I'm not nervous about being around her because I know how to deal with her personality, and I know how to set boundaries in a loving way for both her and for myself. So another thing that you want to do with these triggers is to think back. If you have previous holidays or parties or anything like that with people, like think back about patterns. So what happens what always starts to lead up to the explosion, or whenever you start to feel really drained, or whenever you're like, I need to get out of here? Like, what is happening around that? Maybe there's physical cues that your body's giving you. It's like you start to maybe, I don't know, rub your forehead. Maybe you start to play with your hair. Maybe you start to do little things that you're like, oh, I never realized that I started doing those things before I got nervous or before this thing happened. And this might be a chance whenever you can ask your husband or your best friend, like, do you notice I do anything before I start to really have my meltdown moments? Because they might be able to recognize it in you. And then from there can help you figure out maybe it's time to remove yourself. One tip that I personally love, and I tell like everybody that I talk to around the holidays, is called the HALT method. If you're not familiar with it, it's great. It's super easy to remember. It's just HALT, HALT. So it stands for, are you hungry? Are you angry? Are you lonely? Or are you tired? So typically, if you feel one of those feelings, no matter what situation you go into, even if it's the best situation ever, you're probably going to find something wrong with that situation. Versus if you are not hungry, if you are not angry, if you are feeling loved and comforted, and if you're not tired, you can go into a difficult situation and it might be challenging, but it's not going to totally make you fall on your face. So keep that in mind. Are you meeting your basic needs? So HALT. Another big one that I do is reframing. So instead of thinking something like, that person is criticizing me again, maybe change the thought in your brain to say, they're expressing their opinion, but I don't have to internalize it, and it doesn't affect me. And that's a really hard one to switch in your brain. Maybe somebody says about your child, why won't your child just sit down at the table? And you might hear, they're criticizing me and they're criticizing my child. I'm a bad mom because my child won't sit still. When in your mind, go back to the idea of this reframe where instead of saying they're criticizing me, think, they must want my kid to sit still for some reason. And that would be really awesome if my kid would sit still. But we have to remember that he's been sitting still for the past hour and a half. He might need to get up and move around. He might be hungry. He might need a diaper change. You never know what's going on. And again, it's not about you. Sometimes people just have feelings and they express those feelings. The other one that I like is a pause plan. So if at any point you're feeling like really triggered and you're just like, I need a break, all you have to do is just inhale and exhale. And I know that sounds simple, but I have a little twist to it. So inhale as you say the first half of the Hail Mary. So just Hail Mary, full of grace. And then exhale as you say the second half. And what that does is that you will start to realize that you might be holding your breath, and that by holding your breath, your brain is then not getting oxygen. And then when your brain doesn't get oxygen, bad things start to happen. So just, again, make sure that you breathe, take that second. If you need to actually leave the room and like physically leave the room, do that too. But even if it's just taking like a little second at the table, that's fine too. And then the last one is just to go into whatever you're in or whatever you're going to and reminding yourself, with whether that be affirmations or just like telling yourself over and over again that I am responsible for my own peace and for showing up with my, let me rephrase that. I am responsible for protecting my peace and for showing up with love. I am not responsible for their actions or their reactions. So again, I am responsible for me. They are responsible for them. And that's all that you really have to do. So one client that I worked with, she was so stressed about going to Christmas at her mom's house because they had like a whole bunch of family stuff happening and it was just a lot. So whenever she would get there, her parents would like be snapping at the kids and be like, this is like, your kids are misbehaving. Why are they doing X, Y, Z? Blah, blah, blah. So what she did is she set boundaries with her mom, and she basically said, I know what you mean, like that you mean well, but I'd appreciate if you could talk to me about this outside of the holidays and when my kids are not around. My kids do not need to hear your critiques about them, And plus, I want this holiday to just be like a nice time for us. And then in addition to that, and her mom didn't really like it, but she got over it and they had a talk and everything was fine after that. In addition to that, she also had these little 10-minute like quiet breaks where literally she would set a phone alarm, or her watch, I think it was. And every 30 minutes she would have an alarm go off where she would like go outside and just take a breath. Sometimes she would take her kids if they were being kind of wild, but it was just like, that was her plan. And then again, after that, not to say that every single thing cleared up, but it at least made it so that she wasn't really stressed out all the time. And then just a personal strategy that my husband and I have is it's my extended family dynamic is really odd and relationships are kind of weird. And so one thing that we do whenever we find ourselves in a situation that we're like, we need an exit plan, but we don't know how to escape this, or if my husband sees me in a situation, it's like, that's not a good situation for you to be in. What he'll do, or what I'll do is, we have the phrase that we just ask each other is, do we need to go grocery shopping? And it's so simple and it's like completely random. And people are always like, oh, why do you ask that? And then one of us will be like, oh, I can't remember if we have milk. And then everybody's like, oh, okay. And then it just is a way to like kind of stop the conversation or to pull me out of a situation or him out of a situation so we can talk about our grocery list. So that's just one little tip that we use. So those are some different ideas about understanding your needs and triggers. Now, setting boundaries without guilt is really difficult because so many of us are told today to just be good little girls who just do what we're told and not have any feelings and just, again, do whatever we're told. But one thing important to know is that boundaries are not about keeping people out. It's really about protecting what's valuable inside. So if you think about a fence, again, most people think of the fence as keeping everybody out. But the way we think about it is that the fence is keeping everybody inside of the fence safe. So just think of if you've ever had a toddler and you know why you put a fence around the yard. It's not meant to be mean, but it's meant to keep him safe. So the same applies for these emotional boundaries as well. It's not unkind to say no. It might feel like it, but it's really not. So examples of this would just be if somebody asks you out or over, you could just say, I'd love to help, but I'm already committed to something else. Or that doesn't work for me, but I appreciate you asking. If you're getting unsolicited advice, you could say, thanks for sharing. I'll keep that in mind. Or I've got this, but I appreciate your concern. If you are getting asked to a million parties and you're like, I can't do one more, then you can just say, like, I'm sorry I won't be able to attend, but I'm really excited to hear about it afterwards. Or if your family is like, are you going to come over to our house? You could say something like, we've made some changes to our traditions and we want to make them a little bit more intimate and meaningful for our family. So we're not going to attend this year. And then just for managing expectations, one big one is that I can't commit to that. And that's it. And then what do you do if people can't or don't respect your boundaries? One, you stay kind but firm. So just, I understand that this is important to you, but I need you to respect my decision. Or my decision hasn't changed. Or this is what works best for me. So you can make it in a way that's very clear without being mean. And it's not mean to have boundaries. So I would love for Manuela to speak about boundaries a bit.
Thank you for all of that, Bridget, because I definitely was able to find some of my own triggers that it's funny because I'm like, I love the holidays. They're not triggering at all. And then as soon as you ask me all those questions, I'm like writing down all the things. Actually, these things do really bother me. So sometimes we just need a moment to kind of even pre-plan in our head because we forget from year to year that these things can be patterns. Thank you for walking us through that. And I put in the chat all of those great tips that you gave. I wasn't able to get all your scripts down that you were giving us, but I think we'll get to that in a bit. Another one I like to say is, let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you, because it's sometimes a lot easier to text someone a no thank you after the fact. If you're face to face and they're like, hey, can you come to this thing? Like, wow, that sounds really fun. Let me just check my calendar or talk to my husband tonight and I'll get back to you. And then you can kind of, it buys you a little time to think of a way to bow out gracefully. And even when it comes to unsolicited advice, one of the things I often will just say, that's really interesting. And I just leave it there. So what I wanted to talk a bit about with boundaries too, yeah, I love what you said, be kind but firm. I think about with children, we say that all the time, right? Be firm and kind. And just think of that with everybody. Saying no, no is a complete sentence. No, thank you, if you want to be nicer about it. Hey, do you guys think you'll have time to get together with us this weekend or this holiday season? I'd love to, but no. You're answering the question, right? I think the problem with a lot of us, especially women, is we don't feel worthy to allow empty space. We think we need to fill the time. It's like, I can't just let there be a silence, a gap. Honestly, that can be more overwhelming and more anxiety provoking than feeling like we have to over explain. When it comes to effective communication, I would say less is always more. We feel like we have to keep going and keep explaining and over explaining, and then we end up saying things that we really didn't need to say, right? So having these few scripts, I think, would be great. Sorry, Bridget, you asked me a question when I jumped in. Can you talk about setting boundaries? And then did you say what happens when people don't respect? What was I?
Yeah, just anything, like if you have any additional scripts or tricks or
Yeah.
tips whenever you start to feel like you want to say no, but your body's like clamming up or tensing up and your brain's like, say yes, say yes, say yes.
Right. Okay, so we'll just keep going with where I was going here. So it's great to have these scripts and these mantras, but at the end of the day, if it's hard for you to say them, you're not going to say them when you're under pressure. So we need to kind of practice vocalizing them. Okay, so we're going to do a little quick visualization again. I want you to just close your eyes. Okay, imagine one of those things that you wrote down as a trigger or a holiday scenario that you could predict, that maybe is a common pattern. Maybe the first one you wrote down or the one that just feels right now the most pressing for you. Okay. So this situation happens. Maybe it's the things we talked about, family tensions, unsolicited advice, different expectations. How would you, in a perfect situation, if this was a movie and you could write the words, write the script for your characters, and you being the lead character, of course, how would you love to respond? What would you love to say? And if you're having trouble because you don't even know what that would look like, that's okay. Because if we've never said those things before, it can feel like it's not real, like it's not us, like we couldn't say that. Okay, now I want you to open your eyes and I'm going to give you a minute. I'll time it here to write that down, right? Write the response you would say. And I'm going to do mine too. And I will share it. Now, if you are having trouble drawing or writing it down, again, if you're watching the replay, or Army, you can go back and try this again. Sometimes like you can't even think of the words. Hopefully some of the things we've been saying are helpful to kind of get you started. But you can even, if you're somebody to draw, you could draw it, draw a picture of the scenario and how it ends, or maybe you want to poetically write about it, but it's good to like express it in the way that feels good for you. Maybe go for a walk and talk the scenario out in your head a little bit, or practice it with a friend. And that's what hopefully we'll get to today, just a little bit of practicing that. Because like I said, if we haven't built that safety net to actually express it, then it's going to be hard when we're in those heated moments to say it. One thing I did want to say, that's what I wanted to say, Bridget, when you had handed over the mic to me. When we talk about boundaries, I love the analogy that you gave about the fence. I've never heard it like that, and that's so brilliant. But we can think it's being mean, like, oh, if I don't see so-and-so, I'm being mean or whatever. But whenever I have taken care of myself first, I've actually been a better person to others. So if we don't take that time to set those boundaries, what's going to happen for me, the things that I wrote down here when Bridget was talking was, shallow breathing, I get really hot, I start getting louder and like I talk from my chest and maybe start slamming things, and I can feel that like you're a powder keg and you're about to blow. That's what happens to me. Maybe for you, you just run away and start crying and then you don't talk to anybody. So in the long run, setting boundaries actually is the kinder thing. It actually is loving, because you don't want to flip out on people. You don't want to say things you're going to regret. You want to say things kindly and firmly. And let's think of Jesus. He would go out, he'd preach, he'd make these epic talks. And then what would he do? He would go and take care of himself through prayer, and probably slept a lot, probably ate a little bit and rested, because he was a human being. He could not just keep going, right? So especially as mothers, the HALT method, I wish I knew that one last year at Christmas, because I was definitely always tired. I think as moms, we're like always tired. So that's always number one. And then, you can feel very lonely and isolated. So boundaries are loving. Boundaries just make you show up even better when you do show up. It doesn't mean you're cutting people off and being this horrible person. It means you want to show up for them even better. Okay, so I would love to, we're going to keep moseying along here, but if you want to share what you wrote, even Army, if you're not comfortable speaking it, you don't even have to turn your camera on. You can just turn your mic on. If you'd like to share, you're welcome to put it in the chat or turn on your mic and tell us. I will share the one thing that came up for me, and maybe Bridget, you can as well if you're comfortable. One trigger that I realized is, so we host Christmas here, and when everybody starts showing up, they all bring the presents, and my kids just immediately start opening all the presents, but I'm still in the kitchen with my apron on and the hot oven going, and I'm like, and then the next day I'm like, so what did you get, and who was it from, and that really bothers me, because I want to be a part of that experience, and I want to thank the people who gave it to them. But you know how kids are, they're not going to wait. So having a script of like, I love how everyone's so excited, but we'll do presents in blank minutes. Like we'll do presents in 20 minutes when we can all sit down and be present together, present for the presents. So that was one that I'm going to try and work on. So if anybody else wants to share one and practice vocalizing it.
Yeah, I can do mine. So mine's fairly general, but it's about, again, I'm sort of the black sheep in my family in terms of like what we eat, what we wear, that sort of thing. And so mine is more general around that. And I would really love to say, and I love that like prompt that you gave, I really need you to stop interjecting your beliefs and just trust that I'm doing what I believe is best. And even saying it right now, I'm like, that's so mean.
Are you kidding?
I know it's not, but it feels so mean. So I think that was great that you had me say it out loud.
And Army is saying she's always thinking of what to say instead of really listening.
Wow.
Yeah, I have that problem too. And I think we're going to get to that a little bit in the last little bit. We're going to give you some really tactical tools. Because one thing I struggle with, I always pray before, just like Bridget's beautiful prayer at the beginning of this workshop. If I started praying, I have a particular friend that I love her very much. We've known each other for a long time, but we, in the last few years, kind of have seen the world differently. And I would get triggered just thinking about how the conversation was going to go, hanging out with her, if we were going to meet up for coffee or whatever. But the more I started to just pray in the car right before I got out and just say, Holy Spirit, like, let me see her as you see her. And let me hear her, because they're children of God too, right? And we want to see them all as Jesus. Then I could listen better. And I might not respond in the moment. I'm working up to that, right? Let's also give ourselves grace and know this is hard work and it's a work in progress. But at least me not just seeing her as a child of God and seeing her the way he does and trying to like let the Holy Spirit work through me, I'm more comfortable with pauses. I'm more comfortable with, that's really interesting. I'm just going to leave it there. That's really interesting. I never thought of that. And then maybe later I reply, or maybe there'll be another situation where I can reply more. But I think the first step is just not letting it consume us, because people are going to say what they're going to say. We can't control them, like Bridget said. So our job is to help control ourselves, our own self-control. And then God will give us the grace. The more we do this, the more we will be able to say, like what Bridget just said. She said it so beautifully. I thought you had said that a million times. And you're like, even that feels me. No, it feels so great. Because then I think, wow, I want to put my family first too. And that's what you're doing. So Army says, yeah, you exactly. So I hope that was helpful. If you want to share something, Army, that if you can't, are you having trouble thinking of a script right now? Or you just think you'll have trouble actually saying it because you'll be thinking about saying it instead of listening to them? You can go ahead and put that in the chat and we'll keep going here. Yeah. Yes. Was that a yes to? Oh. I don't know if you mean yes to the first question, because I feel like yes to thinking of a script to say. Okay. All right. If you are not comfortable speaking into the mic, we would love to hear your voice. But you can even maybe put the scenario in the comments or in the chat, and maybe Bridget and I could have a stab at a proper response. And you can try a few different ones on for size. Does that sound good? And maybe we'll just keep going here and then we'll.
Yeah, that sounds great. I'm definitely going to come back to that because that was like super great. All right. So I want to move into different tools, and I know we touched on some of them, but I'm just going to spell mine out a little bit more clearly here. So one of them is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. And this is one that really activates your senses and focuses or shifts your focus away from the stressor and just into like what's around you right now. So the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method is think of or identify 5 things that you can see, 4 things that you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 that you can smell, and 1 that you can taste. And again, the purpose isn't so that it like makes you space out and not be present. It's so that you can actually be more present. So that if you can see and touch and feel and like everything that's around you, you're actually going to be able to be more present because you're going to have a better awareness of where you are. I don't know if anybody has ever watched Psych, that TV show, before, but this always reminds me of it, where he has like that telegraphic or photographic type memory. And it's just, again, it's really funny show if you ever need like a little laughing out loud session. Okay, the other one is bilateral stimulation. And this mimics a technique that's used in therapy like EMDR, and it basically soothes the nervous system. So all that you have to do is, there's a few different ways you can do it. Just tap your hands on your thighs in an alternating rhythm. If you have something like I have this little like pocket rosary thing here, all you can do is just go like this to it. And what this does is it soothes your nervous system. It's very, very basic. If you have a fidget spinner thingy, you can do something like that. So just find something like that that works for you. And again, I keep this little rosary. I know my thing's on. So it's literally just like I just spin it around. That's my thing, is I spin it. And I happen to be saying Hail Marys as I'm doing, which is bonus. Another one is breathing. That's super great. We already talked a bit about reframing. So before you get to a situation, just try to condition your brain for that. So for example, if you're just having trouble with day-to-day things like, oh, I'm so tired, like I don't have the energy to work out. Like that's a perfect way to train your brain to reframe. Or instead of saying, oh, I'm so tired, I can't work out, think of, oh, I've done so much today. Like my body's so good. And I'm just going to do like a quick 5-minute stretching exercise. And just doing little reframes like that eventually will, again, increase your resilience. Again, I kind of talked a bit about like the exit phrase strategy. If you have somebody there that can help you with that. If you don't, just create your own like calm anchor phrase. Whether that be like, I don't have to fix everything. And just like keep telling yourself that over and over again. Or like, God is with me in this moment. So it just really helps to bring yourself back like to you instead of focusing on the environment that you're in. And then, Emmanuel, you already said it, but like the pause does a lot of it feels like forever sometimes, but it just gives you time to kind of process what it is that you're going to say, because you'd rather slow down and think instead of say something that you were either going to regret or that you don't really mean. And then I always try to build in like a post-interaction decompression plan. Some of the moms that I work with, they really need like that decompression time, especially if they're around their kids all the time. And so after intense gatherings where you still have all your kids around and you have all these other people around, it's a really great time to prioritize yourself, whether that be like going for a walk, reading a book, journaling about it. Like just give yourself time to like stare at the ceiling. It doesn't have to be a long time, but just a little, like 5 minutes for yourself can really help to recharge you. And then, Emanuela, do you have any other special tricks or tips for us?
Yeah, I like everything you said. I was going to say, yeah, sometimes even going to the bathroom for taking a little longer in the bathroom, just, no one's going to say anything if you need to go to the bathroom for a minute, and then do your quick breathing there, do your self-talk, say a prayer. Prayer really does wonders in helping to ask God to let you see them as they see them. Yeah, I think you said everything. Yeah.
Army, did you have a question or want to say something?
Yes. Can you expound a little bit more on the tools for responding, like the 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, hear, smell, and taste?
Yeah, for sure. So again, the reason that it works is because it takes your brain out of where you are and like more into, well, let me rephrase that. It takes your brain out of like the panic and allows your brain to see safe things that are around you so that you can have this like exit strategy if you need, or that you can start to feel safe. So again, it's 5 things you can see. So right now, if you're sitting wherever you're sitting, just look around you and find 5 things that you can see that bring you just like a sense of either peace or even just neutral. So like for me, I can see a rosary, I can see a picture of Jesus, I can see a little figurine of a husband and wife getting married, I can see a picture of my little 7-month-old, and I can see my 2-year-old sleeping. So those are the 5 things that I can see. And what those have done is showed me like, okay, I'm in a space that I feel safe in, because I'm surrounded by my family, I'm surrounded by my faith, and just reminded of people that I love. 4 things you can touch. If you're standing, that's kind of easy because your 2 feet are going to be on the ground. If you're sitting, just put your 2 feet on the ground. And what you can actually do is just raise your heels slightly, because what that does is that helps to release any stored trauma in your body. So again, just sitting here, raising your heels up and down. And then put your hand on a table, put your hand on a pen, like just touch 4 little things, whatever those might be. 3 things that you can hear. So you might not be able to make it super quiet wherever you are, but if you just take a second. So I hear my HVAC system running, which I'm very thankful to have. I hear my 2-year-old is starting to wake up. And then I can hear my 7-month-old eating. And what that does is it just, again, gives me perspective of where I am, kind of what's happening. And then 2 things you can smell. Again, take a minute to smell something. I don't really smell anything in our house because we don't use any smelly things. So, but I'm sure if you're at a party, you're going to be smelling things. And then 1 thing I can taste is kind of just my saliva, because I've only had water in the past like 2 hours. So, and again, what that does is it takes your brain and it reminds it that it's safe. And like if you are in a situation where you feel uncomfortable, one of the things that you could see might be an exit. So like I have a door in my room, but I don't feel the need to look at the door because I'm not like trying to figure out how to get out of this room. But if you're in a situation where you do feel like that, then that door might be the first thing that you look at, because that's where you feel like you need to go. So again, just the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is just getting you in alignment with your surroundings, helping you feel safe and grounded. Does that help?
Oh, thank you so much. That is so helpful.
Yeah.
I'm actually, hold on for a second. Hold on for a second. I tried to turn on my camera, but anyway, I'm actually holding a bracelet that
You are.
okay. I'm actually holding a bracelet that I
Yeah.
made. This is a leather band. It symbolizes David and Goliath, his sling. And this is the little stone that he used, and this is the miraculous medal.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that is the application of four things you can touch. And
Yeah.
that, thank you so much. Thank you.
Do you wear that often?
Not yet, but I made this because I wanted to always be a reminder. I wanted to wear this with a rosary bracelet.
Well, that is awesome.
Thank you.
Arming yourself with all the things.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Any others, Manuela?
No, I think those are some really tactical tips. Yeah, and if you think of scenarios after this workshop that you want to walk through, finding somebody who can maybe walk through it or write it out script, like she said this, you said this, she said that, and just like I think the more we can be prepared ahead of time, so plan, right? And then obviously life is going to happen. So plan and then listen. No, plan, I would say first plan, then pray, then listen, then breathe, and then respond, right? If we can kind of follow that, I think that we'll be better equipped. And then at the end, also extending compassion for yourself, acknowledge the growth, that it's hard. This is hard work. Again, Bridget and I were talking before the workshop saying like, we don't think Uncle Jim is doing this. Like a lot of people aren't looking at this deeply. They're just saying what they say and maybe not even thinking about it, right? So if you're here and you signed up for this workshop, it means you care. You care to respond effectively and communicate with love. And so give yourself a pat on the back for that today, just for being here and acknowledging that. And so remember that this is growth. It's a journey. You're not going to, oh, well, I did all the things and everything. People are still life is going to happen. And we have to see that those uncomfortable situations, God planned that too. And so that's all working out for our greater good, because Bridget wouldn't be the woman she is today if she didn't have to be the black sheep. She wouldn't be doing the amazing work, helping all these other women, if she didn't go through that herself. So God is pruning you through all of these situations. And then just always having that compassion, even for the others. If we can, that's what I was going to say, go to the bathroom and then pray for them. Pray for them too, right? As soon as we can pray for someone else, then we aren't the victim anymore being attacked. We kind of get our power back in a sense.
Yeah, I love that. The last part, especially, just pray for them. Love that. All right, so we're going to wrap up here. Some of the key takeaways that we talked about are, just recapping here, know your needs and your triggers. If you know those, things are going to go a lot more easily for you. Set boundaries and don't feel bad about setting boundaries. When you set boundaries, you actually love somebody and you love yourself. And then just use your faith and all these tools that we talked about to really stay confident and kind, but again, respecting yourself. And if you have a really hard time setting boundaries for yourself, do it for your children. Because if they see you setting healthy boundaries, they're going to learn to set healthy boundaries. If they see you not setting boundaries and getting walked all over, then they're going to learn that behavior as well. So if you can't do it for yourself, do it for your kids. So thank you so much, Army, for being here live, and for everybody else who's going to be watching the replay. If you have any questions, I'm sure you can reach out to Emanuela. Emanuela, do you want to tell us how to find you?
Yep, I think if you can find me on Instagram, emanuela.hall, or listen to my podcast if you want to improve your speaking and storytelling skills. It's called the Speaking and Storytelling Podcast.
Nice. So thank you so much. And I'll be sending out a replay of this probably tomorrow with maybe some freebies as well that we are going to put together. So if you have any other questions or anything, let us know. Otherwise, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks, Army.
All right. Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.